Well, up first, let's get to the latest India numbers that have been released by the Ministry of Health. And India registered 13,823 new cases, taking the overall count to 1,05,95,660. Now, today's numbers is 37.3% higher than Tuesday's count, which was just a little over 10,000 cases. The country's toll has risen by 162. That's 162 people have died in the last 24 hours, and that's gone up to 1,52,718. Well, let's now focus on India's vaccine drive. India has vaccinated more than 6.3 lakh frontline workers against COVID in the first 4 days. This, even as the world's largest COVID vaccination drive has today entered the 5th day. So far, 9 cases of hospitalizations have been confirmed by the Union Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. The centre has also urged states to address this issue of vaccine hesitancy among some in the priority group. Currently, the vaccine is being administered to the top priority group of 3 crore healthcare workers and frontline workers. Well, to talk more about this, we're now joined by Dr. Ashok Seth, Chairman of Fortis Escorts Heart Institute, Head of Cardiology, Council of Fortis Group of Hospitals. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on the show. I believe you too have been vaccinated. Tell us about that, and are you also surprised and concerned about this vaccine hesitancy that's being observed?
So firstly, let me just say that I was very keen to get the vaccine, and I was disappointed that I was not there on Saturday, not there on Monday, but thankfully I was on the list on Tuesday to get the vaccine. And I have not had any untoward side effects of me to notice. Normally, one does get a fever, a slight ache in the arm, which is just a natural effect rather than a side effect of the vaccine. But I've actually felt fine. After having the vaccine at 11:30, continued to work till 9 o'clock at night, did 14 surgeries, and still remain fine. The second aspect is that nobody should be worried. In fact, on one hand, there's the hesitancy, and I must say, I'm disappointed about the hesitancy. There's clearly a dropout of at least 25% of the healthcare workers day after day, but it's not unusual. Firstly, previous vaccination programs also have had hesitancy. And secondly, we must remember that it's natural to have hesitancy in a small proportion of people who don't say that they're not going to be vaccinated, who just want to watch it and make sure that the others are getting it, and they'll all be coming back to have their vaccines in a week, 10 days, once they have consoled and satisfied themselves. But on the other hand, I will also tell you that there's a whole spectrum of healthcare workers who are keen to get the vaccine, who day after day get disappointed because of the dropouts, and their names are not coming because of the dropouts coming each time. And therefore, I'd urge the government that the program can stay on track, provided the government opens it up a bit and says, even those healthcare workers who did not fall in the list can get it done if there's a dropout. And you believe me, we'll have 100% vaccinations happening day after day, as well as confidence. The more they are done, the greater the confidence to those who are sitting on the fence at the moment, and they will come back to have the vaccination. So right. That's quite clear.
So there should be more flexibility, maybe a backup list of people. Now, we don't want crowding at these centers either, and that's something that the government is worried about. You have the center yesterday telling the states that, take steps to remove this vaccine hesitancy. So what steps can be taken? Do we need to see chief ministers getting vaccinated, stars getting vaccinated, something that, we've seen in the West with a lot of leaders being one of the first to get the vaccines. President-elect Joe Biden got the vaccine. So something like that, do you think would help in, creating more confidence?
So there are 3 points to that, I do believe. Like I said, it's natural. Like I said, that the answer to this shouldn't be, why aren't you getting it done, and can't you understand that there's a responsibility? That's not the way. It's natural, and therefore we need to create the confidence. The first confidence is, of course, I think that doctors are the biggest icons. And I agree with you that there are some other national icons who sometimes it helps for people to create confidence. But I must say that because it's voluntary, I think there's some truth in what you're saying, but the biggest truth is the doctors are clinicians, the doctors are researchers, doctors know the data in depth thoroughly, and doctors have iconic following. Doctors have masses of patients and their relatives who trust upon the doctor. So there can be nothing better than leading doctors coming up front and getting the vaccination done. That's the first confidence amongst healthcare workers and in general the population, when they see their doctor getting the vaccine. The second aspect is that there has to be more information with the public.
All right. So, Dr. Ashok Seth, they're talking about, the vaccination program so far, and as well as vaccine hesitancy that we've seen with, a few people opting not to get the vaccine on the first day and wait and watch. Dr. Seth, your audio is back with us. Finally, are we making too much of it as well? Because, we've seen in the US and in Europe as well, the vaccine programs have been very slow. However, India had, on the first day vaccinated more people than they did on their first day. So, are we going to, in a few days, will it just be on track and, this issue will be behind us?
I do believe so. I mean, after all, 6 lakhs have been vaccinated, very few side effects. It's coming forth. And I think the more we talk about it, the more we actually make sure that the public understands, the more the healthcare workers who just, by the way, sitting on the fences will start coming back and getting themselves vaccinated, the drive will pick up, and that's natural. It's been seen in the past, and therefore I'm not concerned. I'm more concerned about transparency and making sure that the public understands.
Right. Right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Seth, for joining us and talking on the show. Well, let's now focus on a country that's doing extremely well when it comes to vaccination, even as we're facing some challenges. And we're talking about Israel, which is leading the global vaccine race, if we want to refer to it like that. Israel is by far leading the world when it comes to vaccinating its population against COVID, even as the country faces high rates of infection and is under a lockdown. More than 27% of its population of 9.29 million have so far received the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, which to date far outstrips the rates of vaccination in every other country. It is a tiny country for sure, but even so, the rate of vaccination in Israel has been astounding. Well, to talk more about this, we're now joined by Dr. Ron Malka, Ambassador of Israel to India. Thank you so much for joining us again on the show. I believe you have been vaccinated as well. Tell us more about Israel's vaccine program, how many types of vaccines are available there. And I believe the Prime Minister and the government have said that they want to have all adults vaccinated by March.
Good afternoon, and thank you again for having me again in this show. Always pleasure. And yes, Israel is very advancing in its vaccination process. For now, we have vaccinated approximately 25% of the population. All the frontliners, of course, are vaccinated. About 80% of the population above the age of 60 are already vaccinated. And we are advancing very fast. And as you well mentioned, our target, which we are, as it seems of now, we are going to meet it, is that by the end of March, all the population above the age of 16 will be vaccinated. And we are going to open totally the economy by the end of March.
All right. And what do you think other countries can learn from Israel? What this has proven is definitely that Israel has a strong health service, strong health systems.
Yes, in Israel, we have a very efficient, I would say, public health organizations. Everyone is registered in Israel to each one of them. It's mandatory to be registered to a healthcare organization, public healthcare organization that provides the basic healthcare that is needed for the population. So everyone is registered. The accessibility is very high. And of course, preparation. Every operation that you make, the success of it is an outcome of how much you prepared it well. And we started preparing this vaccination operation in advance. Of course, the negotiation with the companies that produced the vaccines, but then once we realized that the vaccines are there to come, we arranged, everyone was just committed to this process. Even the Israeli Defense Forces sent paramedics and reserves to help this endeavor, this effort to vaccinate as fast as we can the population. So we are advancing rapidly. As I said, as of now, 25% of the population are already vaccinated. And as you well mentioned, I myself went to Israel just for less than 20 hours. I was there. I got the first shot of the vaccine and came back on the same day on direct flights from Israel, from India to Israel and back to India with Air India and their good service. So here I am, also vaccinated with the first shot, and 3 weeks from now I'm going to go to take the second shot. What I can also mention that Israel has declared that on February 1st, we'll start vaccinating also the diplomatic corps of other countries that are there in Israel. All the diplomatic corps are going to be vaccinated as well as part of this operation. So it looks very bright and very promising.
And what was your experience like? You've received the first dose of the vaccine. What was your experience like?
Well, I didn't feel anything. So I hear that people here and there have some side effects, but I feel well, very good. I don't feel anything. I didn't even feel the shot, but you know, it's very personally. So, but our experience is great. And of course, we are going to share all the data that we gain. And again, Israel is a model for how we can massively vaccinate, and of course, the whole population in the whole country. So we are sharing all the data that we accumulate, all the analysis that we do, and our experience from this operation of vaccinating, and we're providing it to the world so they can use our experience and to take what is good to take. And of course, if we made any mistake, we share it as well, so nobody will commit this mistake. So I think that Israel is a kind of a global model, I would say, for how we can vaccinate a big population.
And do you have any problems of vaccine hesitancy, which is being seen in other countries? Here in India also, we've just begun our vaccination program. We have a few dropouts. We're seeing some amount of hesitancy. From Israel, there were some reports of a few people facing some sort of facial paralysis. So has this created any sort of issue, or, are people quite, coming forward for those vaccines?
Well, of course, there was some hesitating, there was some reluctance, but, we started a campaign just, for people to compliant with the vaccine, to understand. Of course, our Prime Minister was the first one to get the shot, and of course, it was published, and all our leaders got the vaccine, so the population could see that. And as much as we are advancing and people see that nobody is dead, of course, and nothing severe is happening, unless there are some side effects, which is, again, very accepted, and I would say something that we are not surprised to see, but this is, of course, the price that we are willing to pay in order to get the population vaccinated. I can tell you that my parents as well, they are above the age of 80, so hesitating in the first stage, but then when they saw that everything is going well, they just decided to get the vaccine. Of course, we have so much respect for their decision. They did the decision by themselves, but we feel quite safe with it.
All right, that's great to hear. Also, Ambassador, one thing I read which was very interesting is that there's a lot of flexibility in the program. While you do, summon the people for the vaccine, if some don't show up, then they call up other people to come there. And this is important because we're seeing in other countries, and there are few reports here in India as well, of vaccine doses going to waste, which is something no one wants.
Yes, you're totally right. So we use a lot of flexibility and adaptivity. We understand that things are changing and dynamic. So we have a reserve plan, and we understand that the logistics with this vaccine is quite complicated. So once you have the dosage, when you have it out of the refrigerator, you need to use it. So if someone doesn't show up, we have the alternatives. So as I said, if you plan it in advance and carefully, and you have, plans B and C, so you get to be very efficient. And of course, also these practices we are going to share with the world. That's how we got so effective. And as of now, more than 2 million people, almost 2.5 million people already vaccinated, and we are advancing. And even the pace of vaccinating is increasing from day to day, due to, of course, the experience that we accumulate every day. So we are going to share all these practices and experience with all the world.
Absolutely. And you hope the lockdown will soon be over?
Well, yes, as you well mentioned, so we are in the midst of the third lockdown, the third wave, which is most severe from the former ones. Yesterday, we reached I say not very happily, a record of more than 10,000 infected people in one day. By now, we are more than 500,000 people are already infected in Israel. So in the midst of this wave, we are advancing the vaccination operation. But doing this under lockdown even helps us because, the roads are empty and people are there, they can accessible and they can reach the vaccination places. So in this case, the lockdown even helps us to advance this operation, this effort.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ron Malka, for speaking to us and sharing the experience there in Israel, and great that you've also received that first dose of the vaccine. Well, it's time now for the viewer question segment on the show, and we're joined by Dr. Aparna Jaswal, Director, Department of Cardiology, Fortis Escorts Heart Institute. Thank you so much, Doctor, for sparing your time, and let's listen in to the first question.
Sure.
My name is Shruti, and my question is that as we all know that schools are reopening in US and UK, which has led to increase in the rate of COVID cases also. So my question to you is, what are the precautions that can be taken by students and school authorities to prevent the rise in increase in COVID cases?
All right, Doctor, valid concern given that, schools are opening here in Delhi, Chennai and other places.
So I think one thing which we all have to understand is that whether we are vaccinated or not, we are not going to let go of the mask, the social distancing and the hand wash that we have been practicing from the past. So I think the mainstay that we have to understand to protect ourselves from COVID continues to remain that we have to essentially not let go of the mask, and that holds true for the school as well as the school children, which needs to be reinforced. I think the biggest challenge that we have been facing is that the mask is not respected, and in fact India has done much better than other countries as far as the mask is concerned. So we just need to reinforce this, that we have to ensure our children continue to respect the mask, they do their hand wash and social distancing in school.
All right, well, let's listen into the next question.
Hi, I'm Shaurya from Delhi, and my question is, how long will it take for things to get back to normal with vaccine and people developing immunity?
All right, the question on everyone's minds, when will it go back to normal?
So I think this is a very young child who's speaking, and it's a very, very appropriate question that comes from this person. So I think we should be first have a lot of happiness within us that we have the vaccine around the corner. We're doing much better. Having said that, let's look at this year as a year of healing. And this 2021 is the year which should go by vaccinating all of us and subsequently following all the instructions as I just mentioned. And I think the year 2021 will be the year of change. And I'm sure 2022 we would be largely free of this.
All right, so 2022 is when you estimate that possibly things could go back to normal given that vaccinations have all begun. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Aparna Jaswal, for joining us and answering those questions.